Well, hi there. I'm going to show you how to do this stitch, and it's called the Terra Treasure Stitch, and I put always put the name and rows and little things here so that I know what I'm doing. It also tells me what stitch I'm doing to the right, which one I'm doing to the left, and it just helps me from getting mixed up if I'm working on a lot of projects at the same time. So this is the Terra Treasure Stitch, and it got its name because it's one of the variations I did when I came up with my Terra Magic stitch to get really fast types of shawls and scarves that you could loom up really fast without using purls. So this is a part of what I did when I was working on the Terra Magic. Okay, so to do this stitch, you're going to need to set up your loom. You can use any amount of pegs you want. They'll always be even. And I'm using a 2-peg edge, which is important with this stitch to do the edge I show you. Or if you have another edge that works with really long stitches, that will work out to be the right size so that it'll fit and not curl like you see here. This long edge fits with the long stitch. So it'll be straight and not curl, not pull in. Then you can use a different stitch if you'd like, but I will show you. It's just a stitch video, but I'm going to show you how to do an edge that works with it. And I'm going to give you enough tips that you'll be able to just sit down and make a scarf or a shawl, or you could actually use this in the round if you'd like. Okay, so I've got the 2 pegs for the end, and then I haven't marked these 2, and that tells me they get knitted together. Then I've marked these 2, and I used a knitting needle stitch marker, and all I did was fold it in a figure 8. It's a medium size, so it fits over both pegs, and it's really, really tight, so it's not going to get knit over. And then I didn't do these 2, and then I marked these 2, didn't mark these 2, and then I marked my end pegs that always go together. So I'm using 14 pegs, and I'm going to get a scarf about this width. This is just the project video. I'm not sure if I will continue on this project because I'm also making a shawl. I have a shawl on another loom in this stitch, and I'll have to decide. The yarn I'm using is King Cole Riot Chunky. It's one of my favorite yarns. It is a roving, and it does get thinner and thicker, but I really like it. It's strong. It doesn't break. It is 70% acrylic and 30% wool. And this one is a mix of all kinds of colors. It's got yellows and coppers and pinks and plums and a kind of a I don't know what you'd call that color. It's like a brown purple color in there, but it's got a nice mix of colors. So that's the yarn I'm using. So just hang that up, and we'll get into showing you the stitch here. Okay, so to start it, this is a crochet chain cast on. I will put there'll be a link on this video, so you'll see it's on my YouTube channel, but you'll be able to use this cast on if you'd like. And then I did 2 rows of owl eye, and that's so that your stitch will be flat here and not curl up. I'll show you the owl eye stitch because it's one of the stitches in this project, so you'll be able to see that stitch right here. So crochet chain cast on, there'll be a link in the files, and then I did 2 rows of owl eye, and that put me back over here once I did my 2 rows. So this is right where we're going to start. And we're going to do a row of owl eye here. So we go over the first peg, come back, go over peg 1 and 2, and just knit them off. This is owl eye stitch. Then we wrap behind peg 1 over peg 2, whatever peg we start out, we're going to call peg 1, and knit them off. And I'm keeping this nice and loose. Over peg, we're at peg 1, we go over peg 1 and 2. This is nice and loose. Knit it off. We're at peg 1, we go over peg 1 and 2, nice and loose. knit it off. Peg 1 over peg 1 and 2, knit it off. And that's row 1 of the Terra Treasure Stitch. Okay, over peg 1 and 2, over peg 1 and 2, nice and loose, all the way to the end of the row, and then I'll show you the edge. Developed out of my 2-peg frilly border stitch. It works really well with these stitches. Okay, so we just put our second knit on this one because we always want 2 stitches, and then we're going to do the 2 pegs here together. So we go over peg 1 and 2, nice and loose. We don't want this edge to be really tight compared to the work. That's how you get curly edges, tension problems. Then we go over the pegs this way, coming back, making sure it's loose, and we knit it over. And then because we need to get extra length, we come back behind from the back and wrap over in front again and knit it off. And that's how we continue to do the edges as we go. Now the edge it gives you is this edge that actually, get closer, actually looks like the stitches, fits with it really well. Your side looks like this, so it's a nice side, and then your back looks like this, with this part of this stitch on this side, this part on the middle, and this part of the edge stitch on this side. Okay, now row 2. And this is when it matters that these pegs go together. So we take the first peg pair here, and we're going to wrap in front of them nice and loose and knit them off. Then we're going to take the working yarn, go behind, wrap in front again of the same 2 pegs, nice and loose, and knit it off. Then we're going to come back again. 3 times we're going to do this. Nice and loose, wrap over, and knit it off. And that's all there is to it. Row 1, row 2. So we come to this one again with the marker, and then we wrap over it and wrap over the next one. Come behind, wrap over it again, come behind, wrap over it again, always being nice and loose. Then we go to the next 2, go over them, they have no marker, knit them off, come behind, knit them, come behind and go over the 2 peg pair and knit it off. Come over to the next 2 peg pair, knit them off, always staying nice and loose, go behind, in front, knit it off, and now I lost my count. So this is what you can do when you actually do something like this. I'm going to take these stitches off very slowly and then put them back on and then do it again, because I can make mistakes when my attention is on more than one thing and I'm trying to keep the camera in the right spot as I'm knitting. I can't always keep 2 things in my mind. So well, okay, so this is the 3rd wrap. Then over here, nice and loose, 1, behind, wrap them, number 2, go behind, wrap the 2 together, and number 3. And then we go to these 2 end pegs, wrap them together, 1, then we come back this way and we do 2 this way, go behind and wrap them together. And that's all there is to this stitch. So it's very, very easy. Now there is a little gear in your bottom right hand corner. If you click on that gear, it will open the video to a place where you can slow it down, so you can have this video go as slow as you want if you're really concentrating on how to do a stitch. When you're done and you stretch out your stitches, you'll find that it gets a bit longer, and your edge is going to make it be just a really nice shape. Lays nice and flat and knits up really fast. I don't know if you can notice the difference about how much longer this is just by doing the 2 rows, but it really, really knits up fast. And for my shawl stitches, I like to do the ones that knit up fast since I'm making such a big project. So I actually developed this for shawls. Okay, so then after we've done this edge stitch, we just go back into our owl eye stitch. So we wrap peg 1, then we come back and wrap peg 1 and 2 again. We always make sure each peg gets the 2 stitches on it. So wrap peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, knit it over. At peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, knit it over. At peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, knit it over. And again, we're keeping it really, really loose. You can always loosen it up by pulling on it. Okay, wrap peg 1, over peg 1 and 2. You don't have to be quite as loose as I am. It will still work fine. Just makes it easier to knit over, and because we're doing a shawl, the nice lacier look of the loose stitches, I like that look. They'll still work a little tighter, but don't get it so tight it's hard to knit. It's really hard on your wrist and can give you carpal tunnel. So at peg 1, you wrap over peg 1 and 2, wrap peg 1, over peg 1 and 2, wrap peg 1, over peg 1 and 2. Whoop, went too far. Over just one peg because this is the edge stitch. There we go. I got that back. So what we did was we went over peg 1 and 2, and then we rewrapped peg 2 to get 2 stitches on it. Then we're going to do our end stitch. So we go over these 2 pegs at the end. Even with markers, I can keep going. And we come back, knit these 2, and come back over it and knit them again. Then we're going to do the Terra Magic stitch for this row. That's how we get the Terra Treasure Stitch. It's a 2 stitches, Owl Eye and Treasure Magic. Okay, now we go over these 2 pegs, knit them, we come back, go over, knit it, nice and loose, come back, go over them, knit them again. And pull them down, come back over to the next 2 that are marked. You're always doing the marked pairs. And that's it. That's all there is to it. I'll go to the end of the row, and that should actually give you enough to go ahead and make a project. You know how to do the sides. If you're working in the round, it's just you do the 1 row of the Terra Magic, 1 row of Owl Eye, and make sure that on the Owl Eye row, when you start the Owl Eye, you always put the 2 stitches on it. Wrap it again twice so that every peg has 2 stitches, and you'll have a balanced project in the round. So 3 times over. So you could make a hat to match if you wanted very easily. And then over. It looks pretty much the same in the round. There's very little difference. And then 3, 1, 2, and 3. Sorry about that little flicker. It's snowing really hard here, and we just had a power go out. Well, okay, sorry about that. I don't know what you experienced there, but my power went out. There's a heavy snow falling, and it apparently just did something. So I'm going to end the video really quick here. So just going to do the edge stitch here. I always like to start with my edge stitch already done because it holds everything in really well. And there we go. Those are your 2 rows of stitches. That's all what you need. You can see how long we've got now. It really works up fast. I stretch it out. You can see what a pretty stitch it is. Very pretty, very easy to do. No purls, lays nice and flat. Your side, your back looks like this because part of that edge comes down to make a nice edge on the back. If your back ever shows, it's actually very attractive too. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and until next time, bye.